I just got finished up with a job. We were kind of doing a little negotiation, but they were good people. They weren't trying to take advantage of me, and I appreciated that a lot. I set some boundaries with them because they bartered me down to $100 for the job, which is my minimum. And then they're like, well, I'll give you $140 if you take some chairs in this chest. Well, I started taking the chairs in the chest, and before I knew it, they were throwing like a bunch of random stuff. And then they're like, I'll give you an extra $20. And then I was like, okay, I'll take a couple more things here. So that was a pleasant experience for both parties, I think. We call it a win-win. They got to negotiate, I got to negotiate, I got business, they got rid of stuff. All right, that's enough of that. In this video, we're gonna be talking about how to start a junk removal business with little to no money down. I've been doing junk removal for 4 years now, so I do have experience in the field. I'm telling you this stuff because I'm hoping you guys will learn from my mistakes, take my advice if you're interested in starting a junk removal business. And I do think this could apply to any kind of business that you want to start. So first, I'm going to tell you how I did it. 4 years ago, long story short, my friend and I started a junk removal business, and within the first 6 months of getting up and going, we used about $2,000 of capital. So about $1,000 each. There was 2 of us, keep in mind. That was fine, that was no issue for us, but of course, it would always be nice to start with little to no money down, and that's what we're going to be talking about. What I learned is that using capital is not necessary in this business. I didn't know it at the time. We were using the tools that we had in our shed. So I learned using capital is not necessary. Why? Because you can rent a U-Haul. U-Haul is a massive nationwide company, or something of the likes, something similar, and load into that truck. You can rent it by job. So first step in this business is getting clients. We're not going to talk about how to do this in this video, but you need to get clients, okay? Whatever it is that you got going on to get clients, do it. And once you have your first client, set up that rental for that U-Haul. What I will say, before you get that client, know the price of a U-Haul rental so then it makes sense for you to do your jobs. So then when you do get your first client, you know how to price it because you know how much a U-Haul costs, and maybe you know all your other costs too behind it. The more knowledge you have about that stuff, the better. The more you know about money in and money out, the better. So now, you have your first client. You've rented a U-Haul. And you return the U-Haul. So you paid a one-time fee for this U-Haul. Once you return the U-Haul, it's not your liability anymore. You don't have to maintain the equipment, nothing like that. A U-Haul, depending on where you are, let's say it's 150 bucks or less. I want to say, you know, if we have a really small job around my area, you could probably rent a U-Haul pickup truck, so like a half-ton pickup with no enclosed box, for probably $50 or less. So let's say someone's getting rid of a washer and dryer. You can fit that in the bed of a pickup truck. Before you hop out of this video, because you do have a pickup already and you think to yourself, this doesn't pertain to me, I do think you can get some value out of this and some knowledge. So maybe you don't own a pickup, but you have a family member that has a pickup. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to ask if you don't feel too guilty asking. Ask to borrow that pickup. But my recommendation, the U-Haul way, doing that, renting it. And once you've done this, now there's a big gap in between here. The gap is going to be as big as you want it to be, because it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. And that is keep working at this, doing it this way until you build $10,000 of revenue every month. So it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but my video is about starting a junk removal business with no money down. So I do think you could build a $10,000 a month business doing it this way, renting a U-Haul. And then once you've done $10,000 a month for 3 months in a row, then I think you're ready to consider making an investment and buying some equipment. So I won't get too much into what comes after, but then my advice is getting approved for a loan, and then keeping this cash on the side and not taking a salary yet. then you'll probably have like $20,000 of revenue from all the previous months at least, if you haven't dipped into it. Because just because you do $10,000 a month in revenue for 3 months in a row doesn't mean you're gonna have $30,000. That's not how it works. So then you have $20,000. You could buy equipment outright, some old truck, an old trailer. It is possible, I'm sure. Something to scrape by. Or you could go and get a loan. So I would recommend getting a loan for a slightly better truck and slightly better trailer, but don't be over leveraged, and keep this cash on reserve to pay for your loan payments if, you know, stuff hits the fan, we'll say. So I hope this has been helpful, but this is my blueprint for starting a junk removal business. And like I said, I do think you can do this with any kind of business, really. Of course, if you're wanting to start some super world-changing business, you're not going to do it this way. Like, for example, you want to start a pharmacy company or something like that, you're not even going to be watching this video. I do think this blueprint could apply to many different models. Just modify it the way that fits correctly to the model. I didn't really talk numbers, but I'll talk numbers now quick. I would say $300 or less, you could start doing this realistically. And right away, say you have a job that's $200. $300 includes the U-Haul rental. So that's assuming you have your first client lined up. If you don't, then it's going to be less than $300 entry fee. I do think there's a little fine line between skin in the game and being more motivated because you have skin in the game, but I do like this model because if you're truly motivated to start a business, this is a good way to do something without having to use a lot of capital. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Until next time.